It happened on a crisp Saturday evening, one of those golden hours where everything just feels right. We were on a rooftop downtown, city lights twinkling below us. He dropped to one knee, and for a moment, the world just stopped. His voice cracked a little when he said, "Will you marry me?" I thought I was living in a fairy tale, and without a second thought, I said yes. My heart was full. My mind was racing ahead to white dresses, vows, and forever. We had been together for almost 3 years. His name was Jason. He was charming, reliable, and made me feel like I mattered. Not in the flashy Instagram way, but in small things. Remembering my coffee order, calling my mom on her birthday, even watching my guilty pleasure shows, without complaining. So when he proposed, I truly believed it was the next natural step in our story. After the proposal, everything changed in the most exciting way. My phone blew up with congratulations. My mom cried when she saw the ring. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly wanted to grab coffee and hear all the details. For a while, I lived in a bubble of joy. We started looking at venues, and I bought one of those ridiculous wedding planning binders. But here's the thing, looking back now, I realize there were signs. Jason got weird about his phone. He started working late more often. When I asked simple questions, like where he'd been or who he was with, he'd act annoyed or just change the subject. At the time, I told myself I was overthinking, that maybe it was wedding stress or just bad timing. One night, I caught him flinching when I reached for his phone to take a picture of the ring. I laughed it off, but something inside me tightened. I didn't want to be the paranoid fiancé. I wanted to be the cool, trusting partner. But that small moment, that little flinch, was the first crack in our picture-perfect story. I still remember the day I started to truly question everything. We were at brunch with friends, and one of his buddies accidentally mentioned a name I'd never heard before. "Oh, that was when Jason and Emily..." "Wait, never mind." He froze. Jason gave him this death glare, and the whole table got awkwardly quiet. That was the first time I felt the gut punch of doubt. Who was Emily? Why had I never heard of her? Why did Jason look like he was ready to crawl out of his skin? I didn't want to believe there was something wrong. I loved him. I said yes to forever. But a voice inside me started whispering something I couldn't ignore. After that brunch, the name Emily echoed in my mind for days. It was just a slip, but slips like that don't happen unless there's something underneath. Jason tried to laugh it off when I asked. He said, "Oh, she's just an old classmate. Don't overthink it." But that answer didn't sit right. There was something in his eyes, something guarded. My gut told me he was hiding something. That's when I started doing something I never thought I'd do in a relationship I trusted. I started watching, quietly, carefully. I didn't want to snoop. I wanted to trust him. But there's a difference between paranoia and instinct, and my instinct was screaming. So I paid attention. He had a second phone. I didn't notice it until I saw him charge it one night while he thought I was asleep. It looked older, but it lit up, and it wasn't the phone I knew. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to be sure. I needed more than just a bad feeling. A few days later, I found a photo tucked between some receipts in his car. It was from a wedding, someone else's. He was in a suit, holding hands with a woman who wasn't me. She looked familiar, and it hit me. That was the Emily from brunch. Same smile, same eyes, but in this photo, they looked close, too close. I couldn't breathe. My hands shook. I took the photo and slid it into my pocket. That night, I sat in bed with my thoughts spinning out of control. Was he cheating? Was he engaged before? Was I just some placeholder in a story that started before me? The next morning, I decided I couldn't keep it all in. I confronted him. I held up the photo and asked him calmly, "Who is she?" And for a moment, Jason froze. Not a blink, not a word, just silence. Then he said it. "She's my ex, but it's complicated." Complicated? That word hit me like a punch. I asked, "Complicated how? Are you seeing her again? Are you lying to me?" And that's when the dam broke. He admitted they had dated on and off for years, that she reached out a few months ago, that they had talked, whatever that meant. I sat there, numb. My fiancé, the man who promised me forever, was hiding conversations with a woman he used to love, a woman he never even told me about. And now I was supposed to believe it was harmless? Jason begged me not to overreact, said it meant nothing, but that wasn't the point. The point was, he lied, he hid, he let another woman back into our lives behind my back, and he still wanted me to believe this was all okay. In that moment, something in me cracked. Not loud, not angry, just a quiet shift. I knew I had to protect myself. After that night, nothing between us felt real anymore. His words sounded polished, like lines rehearsed for damage control. I stopped looking at him as my fiancé and started seeing him for what he was, someone capable of betraying my trust with a straight face. But I wasn't going to fall apart. Not yet. I needed answers. So I did what most wouldn't admit. They call it snooping. But to me, it was survival. One morning, while he was in the shower, I checked his second phone. It wasn't locked. Part of me thinks he never expected me to look. And what I found? It was worse than I imagined. There were months of texts with Emily. Not flirty, not romantic. No, it was deeper than that. It was intimate. They talked about me, about our wedding, about how quickly things were moving. He even told her he felt trapped, like he was marrying me to prove something. My heart sank. One message stood out more than the rest. Emily had texted him, "You don't have to go through with it. You still have time. Just say the word." And Jason replied, "I know. I just need to figure out how." That was all I needed. I wasn't just a rebound. I was a convenience, someone to settle with. And now I was an obstacle in the way of his maybe someday with his ex. But the biggest blow? I found out Emily was recently hired by the company we booked for our wedding planning. It suddenly made sense. The missed appointments, the venue getting double booked, my dress fitting mysteriously delayed. Things that seemed like innocent mistakes now felt deliberate. I even remembered our wedding planner's assistant mentioning that the lead planner had taken leave and someone else had stepped in. Guess who? Emily. Jason never told me she was working on our wedding. He said nothing, while his ex handled the most personal details of the biggest day of my life. He let her into my world and didn't even warn me. He kept me in the dark while they played puppet master with my future. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. They weren't just messing with my heart, they were messing with my life. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just felt cold. I knew then I wasn't going to walk into a wedding I didn't trust. I was done letting them control the narrative. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about taking back my power. I didn't confront him right away. No yelling, no dramatic exit. That's what he would have expected. That's what she probably hoped for too. But I had a different plan, one that didn't give either of them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. The next morning, I played the role, smiled, kissed him goodbye, told him I'd be out finalizing some last-minute wedding prep with the planner. He didn't even flinch. He had no clue I knew. But instead of meeting with the planner, I went straight to the venue. I asked to speak with the event coordinator, the one actually in charge. She was a kind older woman who immediately recognized me as the bride with the switched schedules. When I asked about who'd been handling my event, she pulled up a file. Emily's name was there, clear as day, signed off on every delay, every change, every vendor conflict. She had sabotaged everything. I calmly explained the situation to the coordinator, who was shocked. She said she'd look into it and promised she'd handle things personally from then on. I asked her to keep everything between us. I wasn't canceling the wedding. I was changing the ending. I contacted the guests and told them we were moving up the ceremony by 1 hour, quietly, just enough so Jason would show up too late to stop what I had planned. I arranged for a microphone to be set up, right at the altar, and then I had copies made, screenshots of the texts, a timeline of Emily's sabotage, and even photos of Jason and Emily at a bar 2 weeks before he proposed to me. Every detail printed and bound into neat little folders, one for each guest. The day of the wedding came. My dress was perfect. My hair was done. My heart, steady. The guests arrived, confused about the time change, but smiling. They took their seats. And then I walked down the aisle, not to marry him, but to expose him. I stood at the altar and took the mic. I looked into the crowd, at the people who loved me, and at the front row where Jason's parents sat, beaming, unaware. And I spoke. I told them the truth. Every piece. How Jason had betrayed me. How Emily had inserted herself into my life. How the entire wedding had been a game I never agreed to play. And then the folders were handed out, one by one. I didn't have to scream. The truth did the work for me. Jason showed up 10 minutes later, all smiles, until he saw the looks on everyone's faces. He froze. He knew. I just looked at him. Calm, collected, done. And then I walked out. Not broken, not bitter, free. Walking away from that altar felt like stepping out of a nightmare. But it wasn't just about ending a wedding. It was about reclaiming my life. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked out with dignity, with peace. And for the first time in months, I could actually breathe. The aftermath hit fast. Guests reached out with messages of support, some even apologizing for not seeing through Jason's mask. His own mother called me in tears, heartbroken and embarrassed. She had no idea her son had been hiding so much. As for Jason and Emily, well, word spread fast. Vendors started pulling out of their events. Friends distanced themselves. Even his job caught wind of the drama. Apparently, office relationships weren't exactly encouraged, especially ones that involved public scandals. Let's just say, life started unraveling for them real quick. But I wasn't focused on their downfall. That wasn't the point. I was focused on me. I took the honeymoon trip anyway, alone, and that solo vacation, it changed everything. I swam in oceans I used to only dream about, ate dinner under the stars, laughed with strangers, slept in without guilt. I started journaling again, writing about the pain, but also the power in choosing myself. One night, sitting on a quiet beach, I thought about forgiveness. Not for them, they hadn't earned that, but for me, for the girl who ignored the red flags, for the woman who believed the lies. I forgave myself for trusting the wrong person, for holding on too long, for letting someone else's love define my worth. Because the truth is, I'm not broken. I was just bruised, and bruises fade. When I got back home, I moved out of the apartment we shared. Started fresh in a smaller place with a big window and quiet mornings. I redecorated it to feel like me, not the version of me he wanted, but the real me. Work got better too. I started focusing more on projects I loved, turned down things that didn't feel right. I even started mentoring younger women in my field. Sharing what I'd been through gave others the courage to speak up, to walk away, to stand tall. A few months later, I ran into Jason at a grocery store. He looked tired, worn out, lost. And me? I smiled, said hi, and kept walking. Not out of spite, not because I wanted to show off, but because I didn't owe him anything. My life had moved on. I had moved on. This whole mess, as painful as it was, taught me something I'll never forget. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And when you choose yourself, truly and unapologetically, everything begins to change. He proposed. Then I found out the truth. But in the end, the truth set me free.